Make avoidance regret losing you. You know what's funny? We chase people who run and ignore those who stay. We pour our energy into someone who pulls away and think if I could just do more, be more, say the right thing, maybe they'd finally see our worth. But here's the truth, you don't need to prove anything to someone who can't even stay close. Avoidants pull away not because you're not enough, but because closeness feels threatening to them. They want intimacy until it becomes real. Then they panic, disappear, or sabotage it. But your job isn't to shrink yourself so they feel comfortable. Your job is to stay rooted in your value. So how do you make someone like that regret losing you? By living in such a way that their absence becomes obvious. By becoming so fully yourself, grounded, radiant, loved, not because they came back, but because you moved on. You make them regret losing you not with a dramatic post or a revenge plan, but by quietly, confidently thriving in a life that no longer needs their permission to be beautiful. Let them sit in the silence they created. Let them feel the sting of your absence, because your presence was a gift, and you're done offering it to people who don't know how to hold it. When someone avoids emotional closeness, it's easy to think you did something wrong. You start replaying every conversation, every message, every moment where you might have said too much, cared too fast, or shown more vulnerability than you think you should have. But here's the truth that people don't often tell you: their avoidance has nothing to do with your worth. It's not about whether you were attractive enough, smart enough, funny enough, or low maintenance enough. It's about their relationship with intimacy, and more importantly, their fear of being truly seen. Avoidant individuals typically carry a deep-rooted discomfort with emotional closeness. When things get too real, when the connection starts to deepen beyond surface-level fun, they begin to panic. This panic doesn't necessarily look like fear on the outside. It often looks like distance, coldness, or even sudden criticism. But underneath, it's a protective mechanism. It's how they maintain control. It's how they keep themselves safe from the vulnerability that deep relationships require. What happens next is where many people fall into the trap. We start internalizing their withdrawal. We believe their emotional unavailability is a response to our inadequacy. We start thinking, if I just didn't ask for too much, if I were a little more detached, if I made them feel more needed and less pressured, maybe they'd stay. That thinking keeps you locked in a cycle of chasing love from someone who is not emotionally equipped to give it. And this is exactly what you must break away from. Because the truth is, you are not responsible for someone else's inability to connect. You don't have to work overtime to earn affection from someone who resists intimacy. When someone cannot meet you where you are emotionally, it doesn't mean you're too much. It means they're not ready for what you have to offer. And in relationships, readiness matters more than potential. Think about it. Would you ever blame a locked door for not opening when you knock? Or would you accept that it's locked and stop bruising your knuckles trying to get in? That's how you need to view someone who is emotionally avoidant. Stop seeing their rejection or withdrawal as a reflection of your worth. See it as a sign that this person, however charming or magnetic they seemed at first, isn't capable of the kind of emotional partnership you deserve. Your energy, love, compassion, and loyalty are valuable. You shouldn't have to dim your emotional depth just to keep someone around. The right person will not only accept your openness, they'll welcome it. You won't feel like you're too much. You won't feel like you're begging for crumbs. So instead of trying to shrink yourself to fit into someone's emotional limitations, choose to honor what you bring to the table and walk away when it's clear they can't sit with you there. Because ultimately, the moment you stop proving your worth to the wrong person, you create space for the right one to see it effortlessly. When someone begins to pull away, our natural instinct is to close the gap. We feel the shift in their energy, the slow replies, the vague responses, the emotional distance, and we panic. We reach out more. We overthink our messages. We try to recapture the warmth we once felt by giving more, doing more, explaining ourselves, or asking where things went wrong. But the more we chase, the further they seem to drift. And in this quiet tug of war, we forget the most powerful response we can have to stay grounded. Avoidant people often pull back when they feel things are getting too emotionally intimate. Their internal alarm goes off, not necessarily because of something you did, but because their wiring associates closeness with discomfort or even danger. So when they start retreating, what they're really doing is self-protecting. The more you push forward in that moment, asking them to explain, to show up, to commit, the more they feel the need to retreat. And suddenly, you're stuck in a dynamic where your effort makes them with further, and their withdrawal makes you try even harder. It's exhausting, and it chips away at your self-respect. But here's the truth. You don't have to match their fear with your anxiety. Just because someone pulls away doesn't mean you have to chase. When you feel that instinct to run after them emotionally, to fix the connection, that's your cue to pause instead. That's the moment to check in with yourself, not with them. Because the second you start trying to earn someone's presence, you've already put yourself in a position of emotional disadvantage. You're telling yourself, they hold the power here. I just have to be enough for them to want me again. And that mindset will quietly erode your confidence. Instead, ground yourself in what's real. Ask, am I being loved in the way I need to be? Am I feeling safe, seen, and respected in this connection? If the answer is no, this solution isn't to work harder at convincing them. It's to stop bending your emotional needs to fit their limitations. You don't stabilize a relationship by destabilizing yourself. Remaining grounded means staying connected to your own emotional clarity. It means honoring your boundaries even when it feels like you're risking the relationship. And it means being willing to let someone go, not because you don't care, but because you care enough about yourself not to be dragged through emotional limbo. When they pull away, your steadiness is your power, not reacting out of fear, not texting to chase, not begging for reassurance, but calmly stepping back and saying, if this connection is real, it won't require me to abandon myself to keep it alive. That stillness, that calm refusal to chase speaks volumes. It says, I want connection, but not at the cost of my dignity. And in many cases, that's exactly what wakes them up, not your effort, not your apologies, but your absence of panic, your peace, because nothing is more attractive or more powerful than someone who doesn't lose themselves when someone else pulls away. Regret isn't created through drama, confrontation, or revenge. It isn't made in moments of shouting, pleading, or posting photos designed to make someone jealous. True regret is born quietly, in your peace, in your growth, in your ability to move forward without needing to prove a point. It's not about making someone miss you by pretending to be okay. It's about becoming so genuinely okay, so rooted in your self-worth that they realize what they lost only after they no longer have access to it. When someone walks away from you, or when they slowly pull back until you're left with confusion and silence, it's natural to want to make them see your value. You want to show them they made a mistake. You want to understand what they threw away. But here's the thing, you don't have to perform pain to prove your worth. And you definitely don't have to stage a comeback just to inspire regret. Instead, regret comes when you stop waiting for closure and start writing your next chapter. It comes when you take all the energy you once gave to them, your attention, your low time, and redirect it toward yourself. You channel it into your healing, your passions, your boundaries. You stop letting their distance define your direction. And without saying a word, you show them something more powerful than anger or heartbreak. You show them strength. This isn't about you. Living well doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. It doesn't mean ignoring your feelings or faking indifference. It means processing your pain privately. This isn't about not giving yourself to grieve what could have been, but not letting that grief stop you from building what will be. It means isn't growing so beautifully in your absence of them that they no longer recognize the version of you they once took for granted. The kind of regret that leaves a lasting mark is the one that isn't forced. It's the regret someone feels when they realize they no longer get to experience your love, your loyalty. This isn't about you, not your warmth, not because you've withheld it out of bitterness, but because you've moved on. When you truly stop making someone the center of your emotional universe, that's when the power shifts. Because people often don't understand the depth of what you gave them until they see you giving it to someone else. Or even better, giving it to yourself. You don't have to manipulate a moment to spark regret. You don't need to post cryptic quotes or stage selfies to make someone feel your absence. Regret is felt in the silence, in the peace, in the spaces where they expect you to chase and you don't, where they expect you to reach out and you've already let go. So, if you want to make someone regret losing you, don't think in terms of revenge or performance. Think in terms of personal evolution. Outgrow the version of you who settled for their inconsistency. You not. Become someone they no longer have the privilege of knowing. Because nothing speaks louder than a life that's thriving without the person who once made you doubt your worth. There comes a point when words no longer carry the weight they once did. You've said how you feel, you've explained what you need. You've tried to bridge the gap with conversation, reassurance, vulnerability. But for someone who is emotionally unavailable or avoidant, words often don't land the way you hope they will. They're either dismissed, minimized, or ignored altogether. And at some point, you realize that continuing to argue for your worth isn't just exhausting, it's ineffective. That's when silence becomes your most powerful statement. When someone pulls away, the instinct is often to fill the space they leave behind. You want to close the emotional gap, fix the disconnect, make them understand. But trying to explain your value to someone who isn't willing or able to truly listen ends up costing you your peace. This isn't about you think you're advocating for yourself, but in reality, you're often just trying to convince someone to care, someone who's already shown they're unwilling to meet you halfway. That's not connection, that's pursuit, and it rarely ends in the kind of love you want. Silence, on the other hand, doesn't beg to be understood. It doesn't demand closure. It simply says, I've said enough. I've done enough. I am enough. It's a quiet boundary, a graceful way of stepping back without needing to cause a scene. And it's often in that silence, when they're no longer hearing from you, when they're no longer being asked to show up, that they finally start to feel your absence. And make no mistake, your absence can echo louder than any argument ever could. People tend to realize what they had when it's no longer readily available, when the texts stop coming, when the emotional support vanishes, when your attention, your presence, things they once took for granted, are no longer there to cushion their indifference. That's when silence speaks. That's when they begin to wonder, to reflect, to feel the void you left behind. This isn't about playing games or punishing someone with silence. It's about reclaiming your energy. It's about choosing peace over performance. When someone has repeatedly shown you that they aren't ready to meet your emotional needs, choosing to disengage isn't weakness. It's wisdom. You're not withholding communication out of spite. You're removing yourself from a dynamic that was depleting you. And silence and just affect the person who left. It transforms you too. In silence, you hear your own voice more clearly. You reconnect with your intuition. You realize that peace feels better than proving a point. And in that clarity, you begin to heal. You start seeing the situation not through the lens of what you lost. This isn't about, but through the truth of what you deserve. Let your silence be your strength. Let it hold all the words you no longer need to say. Because the moment you stop speaking into a void and start listening to your own needs, you take your power back. And that power is what makes your absence unforgettable. Your love is not ordinary. Your time, attention, your emotional presence, they are all precious gifts. But somewhere along the way, especially in relationships with emotionally avoidant people, you might forget that. You start offering your love like it's something people have to be convinced to take. You become so focused on getting someone to stay that you overlook whether they even deserve to receive what you're giving. The truth is, love is not just about how much you give. It's also about who you give it to. Being generous with your heart is beautiful, but being selective with your energy is necessary. When you offer your love to someone who is emotionally unavailable, someone who cannot or will not meet you with the same openness, you're investing in a space that cannot grow. It doesn't matter how much you water the soil if it was never fertile to begin with. There's a painful irony in these kinds of dynamics. You keep trying to love someone into emotional safety, thinking if you're just patient enough, kind enough, undemanding enough, they'll change. But what ends up happening is that you shrink yourself. You start tiptoeing around your needs. You suppress your desire for connection, for depth, for consistency, just to keep the peace. And in doing so, you stop honoring the very love you're trying so hard to give. Your love deserves a home, not a hiding place. It deserves to be met with presence, with effort, with emotional maturity. This isn't about can't offer those things, not because they're evil or malicious, but simply because they're not capable. You have to stop offering your hearts if you're trying to convince them of its worth. That's not love. That's emotional labor. That's performing your own value instead of being seen for it. Someone who is emotionally avoidant might say all the right things, might even show up inconsistently just enough to keep you hoping. But when push comes to shove, they pull back. And if you keep giving them your heart despite that, they learn that they don't actually have to step up, that you'll stay anyway, that your love is always available, even when they're not. But the moment you recognize your love as a gift, not a negotiation, you start changing the way you show up. You stop over-explaining your needs. You stop waiting for breadcrumbs. You stop offering your soul in exchange for a text. And you start choosing yourself, not in a selfish way, but in a deeply respectful one. When you understand your love is a gift, you naturally begin to reserve it for those who can actually receive and reciprocate it. You don't need to yell, cry, or beg to be chosen. You simply stop choosing people who make you feel like you have to. That shift alone is powerful, because when you stop handing out your love to people who can't hold it, you create space for someone who not only can, but deeply wants to. Thank you for giving your heart, your time, and your ears to this message. Whether you're healing from a recent breakup, walking away from a situationship, or just learning how to value yourself more deeply, I want you to know you're not alone, and you're not broken. You're learning how to no longer settle. And that's powerful. So take this moment as a reminder your love is not a liability. It's a strength, but only in the hands of someone who knows how to hold it. Keep growing, and never forget, you are the prize. Take care of your heart, and thank you for listening. Until next time.